Is this a clickbait title? Am I just putting this title in order to get myself some views, despite the fact that I'm not even able to get any advertisements? Am I just making this so people can watch this video? Who knows? But, kind of wanted to go make this video today. Bit of a commentary,
Welcome back.
But a major
Here
part is, of course, the date
Thanks
today.
to the valiant efforts of
For
Mobius
those of you who
Squadron and the
aren't
ISAF,
incredibly
Erusea
adept at Ace
accepted the
Combat,
terms of surrender,
today
and the
is September
Continental War
13th,
came to a close.
2021.
However, militant
For those of you
factions led
unaware,
primarily by
that makes
high-ranking
today
officers
the
of the
20th
Erusian Air
anniversary
Force
of
have
Ace
refused
Combat
the
4,
disarmament order.
which for a
They're now
massive
calling
majority of Ace
themselves
Combat
Free
fans
Erusea, and
was the
strength of
very
their
first game that
resistance
introduced them into the
increases daily.
series. That is
Free
until Ace
Erusea
Combat
have
7, which
called
may
for
have very well
steadfast
surpassed Ace
resistance from
Combat
the
4.
remaining.
And of course, I can't record Ace Combat 4, so the closest thing I can do is do Operation Katina on Ace Combat 5.
Mobius 1, engage.
Kind of wanted to make this video
Clear
to
to engage.
talk about the series, how I've grown so much love for it, how it impacted my life. I wouldn't say it changed it, but most definitely did have an effect on my life in what I would say a positive way for the most part. So I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Let's begin. So I was about 4 years old. I know it was around the time of my birthday because I remember it vividly. I remember one of the first gifts I got was a copy of Ace Combat 4 because I was a massive fan of planes at the time. How I became a fan of planes was just hanging around my grandfather, a former Air Force engineer who worked on the B-47 Stratojet. Look that plane up if you're unfamiliar with it. And from there, I was just a massive fan of planes from there on. And I just enjoyed hearing stories, looking at pictures, even going to some air museums and just looking at aircraft from days long gone by. And that's really as simple as it was. It wasn't an overly complex story. I liked planes because of my grandfather, so my parents thought it was a good idea to buy me a game that involved planes. Sure enough, I played the game and I loved it, but I was never really all that good at it, and I was never able to really finish it. Yes, believe it or not, I did not finish Ace Combat 4 when I first got it. Here is the shocking part. The first Ace Combat game I ever bought and finished was Ace Combat 6. And the way I got this copy was very funny as well. Originally, I was going to buy it from a GameStop because it first came out that day, but it was $60 and it was incredibly expensive, so my father opted out of it. But there was a Blockbuster just across the street that rented the game, and so my dad just said, hey, why don't you just rent this game for a bit and then we'll return it. Sure enough, I end up playing this game to utter oblivion for hours on end, and both me and him end up forgetting to return the game back. So we never did return it, and I still have that Blockbuster case to this day, and I still play that same copy of Ace Combat 6 as well. I do not regret not returning it. But yes, that's what really got me into the series. I loved Ace Combat 6, and while I wasn't particularly invested in the story, then again, I don't get invested into a lot of games, so that's not really saying anything against it. I love the planes, I love the missions, I loved the music, all of these things. So I honestly just wanted anything plane related. So that leads into me making what many Ace Combat players would consider to be the worst mistake any Ace Combat fan could ever make. I bought Ace Combat Assault Horizon when it first came out. And at the time of that game, I actually loved it. Yes, I liked DFM, I liked the I liked some of the turret gunner missions, believe it or not, and I even liked the first attack chopper mission. The second one is a massive drag. Even I, with the very limited amount of taste buds that I had back then for video games, still did not like that mission at all. Go figure. Yes, I know how silly that may sound nowadays, and I still have some thoughts on Assault Horizon. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people say it is. But that time has long gone by, and most people just kind of remember Assault Horizon as being that one bad game that almost ruined the series, but now it's back on track, so who cares about it anymore? It's not like that people don't recognize the redeeming qualities that game has, such as its soundtrack, and a lot of its voice acting. But I'm getting off topic.
Locked on. Box 2.
So after that, I played a bunch of Assault Horizon, and I played some Ace Combat 6. And sure enough, I was kind of starting to get back into the series a little bit more upon playing those games again. I started playing on harder difficulties as well. specifically Ace difficulty in Ace Combat 6, which was an absolute blast, and I would never play on any difficulty lower than that. But it's probably where I got the niche to just play any difficulty. Well, playing any difficulty lower than Ace just felt wrong to me, unless I absolutely had to do it to get an unlockable or some kind of achievement. Not that even Paradox Rovers anymore to begin with. By the way, I should preface this. This is rather poor gameplay, I will admit, but I am trying to do this with some commentary in the background. I even had a little script here. Regardless, one day, I believe it was back during 2014, I noticed there was some gameplay of a game on PlayStation 3 known as Ace Combat Infinity, and I noticed that there was a lot of criticism and a lot of mixed feelings about the game within the community, but it was also free on PlayStation 3. Bear in mind, the PlayStation 3 that I had, and still have for that matter, is a backwards compatible one. So I thought, I kind of want to get back into this series again. Why don't I go ahead and play some of the older Ace Combat games? I lost my copy of Ace Combat 4 a long time ago. That being said, there was a game store just across from me in Salem, Massachusetts, that had a copy of 4, 5, 0, 2, 3, and 1. Sure enough, I wasn't that big of a fan of this series by then, so I just went with 4, 5, and 0. Makes things a little bit simple on myself here. Anyway, at the time I just got Ace Combat 4, 0, and 5. I replayed 4 again, having much more skill and experience than I did the last time I played it. And I remember just how fun Ace Combat 4 was, and I remember loving the game from start to finish, getting surprisingly emotionally attached to the story at the time. And to this day, I look at Ace Combat 4 very fondly. It is still, despite its flaws and the fact that it's still rather dated by today's standards, it is still a very solid game with a lot of redeeming qualities. I don't think anybody's going to deny this. Can I just imagine how satisfying it is to get clean XMA hits like that? It never gets old. So anyway, I played more of 4, and before I ended up finishing Ace Combat 4, however, I started with Ace Combat 0. Ace Combat 0 was even better than 4. I loved the story, I loved the characters in it, I liked the way the cutscenes were done, the interviews themselves, I should say. And I just found the music to be somehow even better than the likes of Ace Combat 4. So playing through that game again, playing through 4 again, and playing through 0 made me realize just how much I missed this series and how much I wanted to keep playing it. Then I ended up finishing Ace Combat 0, and then moving on to playing a little bit more of Ace Combat 5. Whether I started Ace Combat 5 before or after I finished 4, I don't quite remember. This was years ago. But then I started with 5, and I'm going to be entirely real with you. I did not like Ace Combat 5 when I first played it. I really disliked the characters and how civilian-like they acted. And truth be told, this is an issue with Ace Combat 0 as well, so I'm not going to entirely bash 5 for it. But 5 came across as very overdramatic, in-your-face, and has the subtlety of a hammer to the face. And I still hold those issues against Ace Combat 5 to this day. But my issues back then were more so gameplay-oriented. Like the fact that transports instantly stop dead in their tracks and just have the braking power of a spoiler on a Bugatti and just stop in midair and you crash into them, and then you have to restart the entire thing over because PlayStation 2 Ace Combat does not have checkpoints. That and a bunch of other ridiculous stuff in Ace Combat 5 really started to make me dislike the game. I was just littered with bad luck from start to finish during my playthrough of Ace Combat 5. Not only would I die from transports often, but I would also die after a mission was complete because there was that one enemy plane that was still around, fired a missile at me even the mission was accomplished, and I die having to restart this entire mission. This actually happened on my live stream, and that is incredibly infuriating. So yeah, I did not like Ace Combat 5 that much, and when I first played through the game, I just wanted to push through the game, finish it once, and be done with it, because I really just wasn't enjoying the game at all. And then I kept going back from 4 and 0 repeatedly, and just loving both of those games. And then I ended up actually going back and on my PlayStation 3, going on the PlayStation Store, and then finally going online, and just trying out the story. I gave myself $20 because I didn't want to wail under the game at the time, and all I wanted to do was simply play Infinity, hopefully get some new planes, and enjoy it from now and then, because I didn't have that much time for video games video games then either because I was busy with school.
Box 2. Hard enemy radar spike.
That should be a wrap-up right there. Yep.
That's a kill.
So, here I am playing Ace Combat Infinity, going back and playing the previous games in the series, and in the middle of me playing Ace Combat Infinity back in 2014 or 2015, two things ended up happening. One, I ended up finally going back and playing the games on the PlayStation 1, specifically Ace Combat 2 and the American version of Ace Combat 3. Nothing needs to be said about the American version of Ace Combat 3. Gameplay-wise, it isn't terrible, but story-wise, it's not even canon, so it's automatically bad.
Hard enemy radar spike. Mobius 1, engage.
Then I ended up playing Ace Combat 2, which is a surprisingly solid game, and I actually played it quite recently, and it still holds up rather well. Either way, the point that I'm trying to make here is that I had a rather unfamiliar and rather unordinary start with the Ace Combat series compared to how most fans first experienced Ace Combat.
Hard enemy radar spike. Nice kill.
However, I think where Ace Combat really started to impact my life the most was with some of the people I met. Now, a couple of you may already know some of the friends that I met on Ace Combat, one of them being Killer, a very good friend of mine, and another one being War Dog, who was one of the first true friends on Ace Combat Infinity that I actually met, and I ended up talking to quite frequently, and I still talk to him frequently to this day. There are some other people who I am very close friends with, who I like quite a lot, but I also know those people are actually rather paranoid when it comes to their names being brought on the internet, so I'm not going to bother mentioning them. I imagine one of them's going to kill me later for not saying this, though. So with that in mind, really, Ace Combat 4, and the reason I'm making this video, is because Ace Combat, for better or for worse, pretty sure for the better, had a major impact on my life. It got me, not only did it get me invested into one of my all-time favorite series, a series that I will still play to this day, and I will never, my love for this series will never truly die. I still have more issues with this series to say, but to be quite honest with you, I still look back fondly on all of these games. And I don't even think the Ace Combat series is truly dead in the water like some people think it is with Ace Combat 7. I do genuinely have hope that they'll continue making good stories with a solid gameplay. Either way, I'm going to keep talking and finish Operation Katina.
Box 2. Out of missiles.
I really should have kept track of my missile count. So, Ace Combat 7 ended up rolling around. I played 4, 5, 0, and a bunch of other Ace Combat games in preparation for this. Me and friends have been waiting for years for this moment, and then when I first played Ace Combat 7, I loved it.
You're in gun range.
I wasn't the hugest fan of the story at the time, but I didn't think the story was bad by any means. But really, where Ace Combat 7 excels, and to where I think it still excels today, is its gameplay. I still love a massive majority of the missions, and I still have a lot of fun when I go back and play Ace Combat 7. Now, one of the biggest issues with 7, of course, is its lack of difficulty for me. To be quite honest with you, Ace Combat 7 would very quickly be one of my favorite Ace Combat games, if there was at least one difficulty that allowed me to play the game and be killed by a single missile hit. I like being challenged in my games. I don't like walking through with no issues. And unfortunately, 7 is one of the few games where I actually get genuinely annoyed at the game being very easy, or too easy. But it is what it is. Hopefully Namco fixes this one day. They did add a casual easy difficulty into the game as a free update. So at this point, they really should just do an Ace of Aces difficulty of some kind. Not introduce new enemies, but just modify the damage numbers a little bit. But moving on from that,
Mobius 1, engage.
that's about all I can really say about the series. It had a major impact on me, both from how much I enjoyed the stories, how much they emotionally resonated with me at the time, and how many friends and people I ended up meeting on here because of that. I had a lot of my friends were people who I just really enjoy talking to, and they're just people I talk about some surface level stuff with, like Ace Combat or anime or stuff or other things. And some other friends that I ended up meeting actually filled me in on some very important life decisions. I'm not going to say that they were like second parents to me, by no means were they. But to say that I didn't learn a lot of lessons, whether it be moral, philosophical, or even religious ones, it would be kind of foolish. I don't want to say the true journey was the friends we made along the way or something along those lines, but my friends impacted my life in a very positive way, and I met all of them through this series. And dare I say, if I didn't have those friends in my life, I probably would have gone insane, especially during the times of COVID, where socializing and being around other people was considered taboo. So, now that I finally left off with my experience on Ace Combat, I want to know, what's yours? How did you originally get into Ace Combat? And don't just start with how you got with Ace Combat. How did you get into Planes? Did you like them from the beginning? Did you have a family member like me who originally got you into them? And if so, and from there, tell me, what was it like first getting into Ace Combat? What did you start with? Did you immediately resonate with the series, or did it take you some time like it did for me? I love discussions like this, so I have absolutely no problem continuing to talk about these things. But here's another thing I wanted to talk about as well. While I do still love this series, I will genuinely say that my love for this series has kind of lowered a little bit with time. Not so much with recent releases like Ace Combat 7, but I have noticed that I have experienced myself a little bit of burnout from how long I've been playing these games. Bear in mind, I've been playing these games since I was 4 years old. Bear in mind, I've been playing these games since I was 4 years old, and I've always been a big fan of them, but time's gotta come up. Your time is gonna be up someday. You can't be doing the same thing forever. There are very few series out there that I am as invested in. And when I say invested, I don't mean emotionally invested in the story, but just games that I just genuinely really enjoy playing. The only two I can actually say are Ace Combat, being this, and another series called Armored Core, but that's completely separate. Have any of you ever experienced this? Have you ever experienced some burnout with the Ace Combat series from how long you've played it? Or have there just been issues that you didn't quite see when you first played this series and are just now recently propping up the more you think about them? Tell me your experience with this series. Tell me everything you can and go into as much detail as possible. Obviously, I don't want you to get too personal and talk about things that make you uncomfortable. I never want to do that to anybody within my fan base. But go into as much detail as you feel comfortable talking about. And believe me, I can be rather open-minded when it comes to this stuff. You could get started with Assault Horizon and have it be your favorite game, and I really wouldn't care. There are some people who genuinely like Assault Horizon, and I don't blame them. I was even one of those people at one point. Regardless, we're on the last mission here, so let's just go ahead and wrap this up.
Mobius 1, engage. Heads up, enemy radar spike.
Do you have issues with this series? Have you always been the biggest fan of this series, or has it kind of died recently? Tell me every single thing. And in the meantime, why not? What were parts of Ace Combat that emotionally resonated with you? Was it something within... What moments in the story did you truly start to love this series? What was the moment where you played the series and you truly said, I love this game, or I love this series, or anything of the sort? I think the parts that really started to sell me on Ace Combat and how much I liked the series were, and I actually remember this very vividly, when I first played Deep Strike. Deep Strike on Ace Combat 4, the mission with some of the best music in the entire game, with that really tense, at least when you first play it, section where you're escaping from Stonehenge, flying as fast as possible through the canyon. That was so that was such an incredibly fun mission that I still remember it to this day. Bear in mind, I was like 4 or 5 at the time that I first played that mission, and when I first beat that mission and saw the Stonehenge cannons, I was absolutely terrified. and I realized just how much fun I was going to have in this game. And then go figure, I ended up not playing the game for a while and then going back to it after playing 6, so... Funny enough, I guess it wasn't that big of a deal back then, but who knows.
You're in gun range. Missile hit.
Anyway,
Mobius 1 shot
all
down
I hope
bandit.
for
Enemy
is just a few things. I hope that Namco ends up going back to their roots with the series. Although they've already kind of been doing that, but I want them to continue to make good stories that expand on Strangeville. Maybe some more with some real life influence, such as Zero, which took a lot of inspiration from World War II.
Nice kill. Locked on.
I just want them to continue to improve the series, and I also want them to take their time. As much as I complain about how long we have to wait for another Ace Combat game, I'd rather them continue to delay it and we get ourselves a fantastic game than to get a rushed product.
Box 2. Missile hit.
I already have an idea of what I want for another Ace Combat game in the future. And truth be told, this is a little bit of a shameless plug, but I don't think I've ever talked about this series on my channel before, so I guess now's a good time to do so finally. Me, with the help of Killer and his brother by the name of KC, ended up finally starting an Ace Combat writing project between the three of us, and we've been working on how we could implement this into a game. And while I know it's never going to happen, if they do make another Ace Combat game, I really wish they could take some ideas from us. I don't care how many ideas they have to take from us, as long as they end up going through with all of them. I want to see a game where all of the Aces come together, and I want a game where all of the Aces also start to talk. Now, I know Ace Combat has never had the best dialogue, and I'm not expecting that best dialogue or the best voice acting to be in any of these characters.
Heads up. Enemy
But I
radar
want them to
spike.
speak. I don't entirely hate silent protagonists, but let's face it, it's from a time long gone by.
Airlock.
Of course, I think it would just be preferable if you watched Fractured Fates and just and experienced it for yourself, because that perfectly encapsulates what I want from this series going forward. And a game that I really hope ends up actually existing one day, even if I know it won't. But even if Fractured Fates doesn't exist, as long as Ace Combat continues to produce strong games, I will always be a fan of this series. Above all else, I want Namco to acknowledge fans of every game of this series. Specifically, people who are fans of Ace Combat 3. Ace Combat 3 fans got gypped in the fact that they had to experience Ace Combat 3 through an English patch on a PC, as opposed to just simply getting the game and putting it in a console and just playing it. Bear in mind, it was over 10 years since Ace Combat 3 came out. Came out back in 1999, and it wasn't until 2016 or 2017, I may very well correct this at some point, that an English patch and the full story itself finally got released for everybody to experience, whether to play it for themselves on PC or to experience the story through a walkthrough. Either way, give back to all of your fans. Support all the fans who supported you up to this point, Project Aces. That's all we ask. And like that, I'm done. Not exactly the best commentary. I hope you stuck with it up to this point, but Ace Combat, thank you. Thank you for giving me the friends that I have today. Thank you for giving me a series that I've loved so much ever since I was 4 years old, and will continue to love despite my issues with the series. And thank you, Project Aces, for creating such an incredible series. To all of you who have been watching up to this point and stuck with this entire video, thank you very much. Have a very nice day. Take care.